Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. Today, myself and Simon are just going to have a quick conversation to try and answer a simple question about lead generation and to offer some ideas and tips you can hopefully implement in your own work. We hope you find it of value. Welcome back. I'm Daniel Hopewell here with Simon Delaney. This is episode 29 of the B2C Lead Gen podcast. And today we're going to be asking a simple question. What makes a good lead generator? So I guess there are a few ways of looking at this. And I did think, Simon, about kind of breaking it down, asking about perspectives, who we're thinking of from the perspective of. But instead of that, I'm just going to ask you simply, this question again, what makes a good lead generator?
So there's like a few answers to it, I guess. But if we start with the sort of basics, number one would definitely be they've got an eye on what the end result of the lead generation is, because that ultimately tells how good the lead generation is going to be. Because any fool can just generate leads that don't go anywhere. I wouldn't even call it lead generation. It's just sort of data collection or data gathering. Whereas if you're focusing on the end result, it means that all the ads that you run, all the targeting that you drive is just constantly getting optimized, because you know that ultimately you want less leads, not more leads. That's a massive mistake a lot of lead generators make. They think more leads.
Yeah.
I mean, we cover it all the time, and it's not. It's the opposite. It's a bit like luck, right? It's like everyone thinks you want to be lucky, but you don't. You want to like have no luck and just make stuff happen.
Yeah.
Lead generation's a bit like that. Reduce the chances of luck taking a part in the conversion of leads. So that would be number one. Number two, I think it helps if you can be quite sort of analytical, purely because that sort of stuff, which is tracking conversions back to either impressions, clicks, form fills, whatever it is. If you're running across multiple different channels, running lots of different affiliates, running quite a few different offers or ads, it really helps if you can sort of nail down quickly and easily what's actually driving at the end results, because then you can just keep optimizing that particular one. Because you find people can spend like weeks and months over analyzing stuff. And obviously that's what we try and do in Databall, is give people these resources that can just run like relatively simple reports and just measure exactly what matters. The other would be the sort of ideal lead generator, and this doesn't need to necessarily be one person. It can be it could be two people, three people, but you need a very sort of creative element, and you need a very technical element. So the creative element also needs to be very sort of conversion focused. So this would be doing stuff like building landing pages. Copywriters are always good. People that can like create compelling offers and compelling headlines. You want designers doing the ads, the landing pages. And this really comes down to what converts. So you're not trying to use psychology to dupe someone into filling a form, but there are sort of known conversion tricks that make your offer or your page stand out more. So I don't know, stuff like having a testimonial above the fold. The headline needs to really sort of resonate and get across the offer quickly. Having a really strong CTA that isn't just like submit form. Having bullet points and keeping them an odd number. So there's all these little things that, if you watch like landing page guys with Oliver Kenyon and a lot of lead generators known, it's something we talk about as well as, there's all this sort of stuff that makes a good lead generator. And on the other side of that, you need someone who can obviously connect systems together. So typically via APIs, or it could be SFTPs. And once you know how to do it, I mean, it's not like overly complex. What's complex is that if you're a lead generator specifically, so for a brand, it's quite easy in one sense, because what they'd normally be doing is generating leads and then just feeding it straight into like a database or a CRM. So they've just got like a single point that it needs to go into. Lead generators, it can be slightly different because they could be running lots of different offers for different clients, and all their clients have different systems, and they might have like really convoluted APIs and stuff they need to deliver it to. And so on the back of that, I'd say what really makes a good lead generator as well is understanding just to keep stuff simple. Because I mean, I've seen some really complicated setups, like literally stuff that's been, I remember walking into a meeting room once. There's two different things that have happened actually. So one of them, someone had written like an entire plan on a huge rollout thing of greaseproof paper. And so like the whole, it was like the bio tapestry, you know, when they sort of pulled it out and it was all written on there. And I was just sort of like, this is just too much. It's going to get too complicated. You know, these things that you're doing aren't really going to make any differences. I've had another one where, again, I walked into a different meeting room and all over the floor were A4 sheets with like different flowchart pieces written on them, with sort of knitted together with like 90 pages of, you know, what I don't know was supposed to happen with data. And in both instances, I've just gone, just forget all of that. Like, what is it that you actually want to happen? And it's always like relatively simple, and so, you know, we can make
it. Why do you think it is made like what the tendency to overcomplicate things? If that's what you're saying, like, well, where does that come from, and why? Why do they do it?
I mean, it's difficult to answer. I guess people just, you know, it's under the belief it's going to make it better. It's like, you know, if I send 1 billion emails out to someone, it's going to convert them more than if I send one. Or you know, I don't know, if I send to this system, that system, this system, and that system, something's going to happen that will make that person convert more. Or
the reason I'm sort of asking this is like
yeah,
we've worked with people before. I don't know names, but I mean, you know, different jobs I'm talking about, not in particular. But I found people who tend to overcomplicate stuff. It's almost masking that they're not confident in what they're doing in their role, if that makes sense. I'm not sure this is applicable here or not, but I've had it with people like they can get more loads of tech and stuff in, they suddenly feel a bit more like, I don't know, almost like confident because they're doing more. Like, is it anything to do with that? Do you think, like, I don't know, like overcomplicating for the sake of adding value, but maybe that's not the way to add value, if you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that could definitely be one of them. So one is, yeah, yeah, it's basically overcompensating for, like, I don't know, maybe you feel like it's easy, or yeah, I guess some people feel like it's too easy, and so they're not, like you said, adding enough value. And so they just try and make it look or seem more complicated because they think that adds value. It doesn't really, it just makes it more complicated. It makes it worse in some respects. The other could be that they're just trying to sort of show off in some way, I guess. So, you know, like if you can say, I use this system, this system, this system, have this process happening, that process happening, it potentially, I don't know, strokes your ego or something. I have no idea. I mean, like the entire time I've been in lead gen, which has been from being like a lead generator to then developing software for people buying or generating leads, my whole MO has been make it as simple as humanly possible, like every single time, everything. Um, and so, yeah, when I see really complicated stuff, it can be quite hard to sort of break it down and go like, you know, I know you think you need to do this stuff, but like, do you really need to do it? Like, is it really making that much of a difference? Or, you know, what is the point? Like, I know people that license, you know, like real enterprise software where they'll have like 4 different systems. It's just no point. Like, they're literally all carrying out like a similar action. It's just a huge waste of money. Someone's personal data is getting shared in like, you know, 4 different organizations. It's just like more chance of something going wrong. That all has to be knitted together. The time has to be spent. It all has to be tracked. It's just, you know, once you dig into this stuff, yeah, you just go make it as simple as possible. That's literally all you need to focus on.
One thing I wanted to ask, I wrote or noted you were talking, is and I have no idea whether this is the case, but you were talking about how the two sides, the creative and the technical side of it. Do you get like lead gen partnerships a lot? Is that something that happens where you get someone who's just focused on the creative side and someone's just focused on the technical? Like, is that a thing? Like, do people work together?
Yeah, so like Oliver Kenyon, who was a guest on this show,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, he was saying that. Do you want to?
yeah,
I
so
was thinking more
they
from the lead gen perspective, I suppose, because they were more like building the pages, but I guess it's
yeah.
similar.
Well, no, I think I don't know if they'll do the ads or not, but yeah, so a lot of people, outsource it to like designers or depending on the size of the company. I think a lot of brands, if they're running lead generation, tend to get like the internal marketing team to do it because they've, the brand Bible will have to come out and someone will go, that
Mm,
pixel is 1/100th of a millimeter out, and so it needs to be removed. Um, but what's interesting is all the design and creative side is outsourced quite a lot. That can be good and bad because design's one thing, but like knowing conversion principles is another. So it doesn't necessarily always work out, but that gets outsourced all the time. The technical side, not very much actually, and it's a side that should be outsourced more often because it's the side that most people struggle with. Because like there's a lot of good designers about, and there's a lot of people who can build landing pages. So
mm,
they're not difficult to find. You could go on LinkedIn, you could just search in Google, like in your local area, you will find millions of designers. You go and find like, oh, I need like, I don't know, an API setup specialist that's gonna be able to do this. There's just, nobody searches these things or thinks about it, but actually then they spend like, can you go and get Jimmy from the development team? Oh no, he's busy for a month, and so we'll have to wait for that. Or we need this other person. And they're like, I haven't got a clue what's going on. And actually, that comes back to this point of different systems. I think that's why it can happen as well. Is that you have like I don't know, a member of the sales team, a member of the internal development team can be, if it's a large company, and I've had this before, like a security member team and a marketing team that are all using different systems, all have different processes and like things that they want to capture or do whatever, and it ends up in this like massive like jigsaw of trying to figure out who's going to do what, why the data has to go there, does this. So you can find that at big brands, and for smaller companies or lead generators. I mean, we set up a lot of APIs a day, but for like big enterprise brands and for small companies. And I would say every single day, without fail, uh, I don't know how many people. I'd have to speak to the customer success team, but let's say 10 people every day appear on our chats and say, "Can you help us set up this API?" I know whenever I've had to do stuff like that in the past, when um, we've been generating leads, I just haven't even thought about it. I've thought this could take me 4 hours. It could take that person 20 minutes. Go and do it, because I think people forget like their time
yeah.
is huge amounts of money, and so you're better off outsourcing that sort of stuff.
So I mean, we talked there about what makes a good lead generator. I think we kind of, I suppose that would appeal more to the lead generators listening in certain senses because they're thinking like, what do I, almost like a check to what I need to be good at being a lead generator. But what about from like the brand perspective? How would they assess like what makes good lead generators so they can almost spot them and work with the best ones?
Um, I mean, we call them professional lead generators, right? So these are the
Mm,
guys. We've had a few of them as guests on this show, who have been doing it a long time, are very experienced, like hit certain niches. Um, so I would say that um, the best ones are going to have it's really basic stuff, right? Like they're going to have a good company website because been around and realized that they need something like that. They'd be able to give you references of another company, maybe even if it's not exactly like in your vertical or industry, like another one that you might have heard of, for example, um, would be one of them. The third would be I'd asked to see some examples, like literal examples of pages either they've built or the processes they've been through. And this comes from like doing due diligence, right? So, for example, When I bought leads in the past, everyone used to get a due diligence document that used to like outline absolutely everything. Because when you're collecting people's personal data, you can't like dick around with this stuff, right? Like you literally need to know everything. And a good lead generator, or professional lead generator as we call them, would have like zero problem providing you this information. There's another thing in this, which is this also requires the brand to get realistic about like what they want the leads to do, because I can guarantee you if what you want is volume of leads and that's like what you're going for, you'll get screwed over, because someone is always going to be cheaper than the next person. The cost of the lead isn't the thing that matters. Obviously, it has to hit ROI to whatever you're selling, or like the product or service or whatever it is that you're generating a lead for. The actual CPL isn't the thing that you need to focus on. It comes back to the beginning point of like what makes good lead generator, and it makes a good lead buyer, is you need to focus on the end result. Working with good lead generators, they're going to do that as well. Like they will laser focus on that end result, and that's all that's going to matter to them, not the number of leads that they send.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we've covered quite a bit there about what makes a good lead generator. Do you think there's anything else to consider?
I mean, I guess what really makes a good lead generator, I would say, and this comes from a perspective of brand or a lead generator, is adding value to the prospect or the consumer or the person who is a lead. So this is where most people fall down, and it's why most lead generators don't have brands, and it's why most brands don't run like a lot of lead gen, or like run it at a campaign level rather than like constantly. So the lead generators are running like massive ads constantly all over the place via native, Facebook, Google, affiliates, wherever else, SEO. And so the opportunity to actually build a brand that has a massive amount of exposure is huge. But because if all you're focused on is like monetizing a person on a one-hit level, that's like literally where your focus goes, is just generating a lead and passing it on. Whereas imagine it went on, actually turning all that, those views and that exposure into building a brand. And what a lot of brands focus on is just converting the customer. So it's like, for a lot of them, it's like filling the leaky bucket. So it's, FMCGs, and every year or whenever, one person leaves and they just want to fill it up again. And so they're not really concentrating on like the future value. It's like, one-hit conversions. So I think that's like a massive thing that anyone involved in lead generation, from either a buying level, a brand level, or a generation level, really needs to focus on. And the very, very best lead generators do is, what is the value we're actually giving to this person? Because if you give them value, and you can give them constant value, and you can either build a brand or you're a brand doing it, you will have a relationship for life with them. They'll become a brand evangelist, and you can cross-sell, upsell other products, and go bring other people in. And that's like the ultimate lead generation. And that's what every brand should aspire to, right?
I think the thing we always say as well is, if you are good to the consumer, it will ultimately be good for the brand and lead generator anyway. Whether or not it's an ideological thing, or whether you're doing it for yourself, I'll take opinions out of that. But what is good for the consumer is ultimately good for everyone else. So I think that's a nice place to focus actually, and work backwards from that. I think that's a good way of thinking about it for sure. Yeah. Cool. That was episode 29 of the B2C Lead Gen podcast. What makes a good lead generator? Cool. Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast, the show for serious lead generators. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.